This is the James Crepea Show.
Most of the time, just eat, play, sleep, and then just do it again.
Oregon Duck beat reporter for the Oregonian, James Crepea.
Yeah, hopefully you have some big wins early this season. You know, that'll mean you've been a better commissioner.
He graduated from Ohio State and covered Auburn. We'll try not to hold it against him. KORE 1050 and 95.7, Fox Sports Eugene. Here is the James Crepea Show, presented by Dairy Mart.
Hit the lights and lock the doors. Welcome, everybody, to the James Crepea Show here on Fox Sports Eugene on this Thursday, October the 3rd. I am James Crepea, the Oregon Ducks beat reporter for the Oregonian and Oregon Live. That's where you can find all my work covering the Ducks. Again, first and foremost with football in the midst of football season, but yes, men's and women's basketball, baseball, and softball also going on as well. Again, there will be fall ball starting on Sunday for both baseball and softball. Practices underway. Actually spoke with softball with Missy Lombardi and Haley Cruz and Jordan Dale earlier this afternoon. So I will have a story later this evening on Oregon softball, as that roster has been very much replenished during the offseason by Melissa Lombardi as she heads into year 2. I know everybody was ranting and raving and had an opinion one way or another about year 1 before it even began, due to all the offseason transfers last fall and last winter. And then, obviously, a team that was ravaged because of those transfers, fought till the bitter end, missed the postseason, but now has a roster that is heavily replenished. I'm not going to say fully restocked. That might be overstating it ever so slightly. But what mattered most was that it got replenished in the pitching circle, and that has been replenished in a big way, in a huge way, because of the available players on the transfer portal by way of pitchers. Oregon got almost every single major arm that there was to be gotten. Yeah, there were 1 or 2 or 3 others that, yes, did go elsewhere. Don't get me wrong. They didn't get the pick of the litter by literally everybody. But they got dang near everybody that they needed to get in the pitching circle. And that's where the team needed the biggest help, because Dale was solo for basically the entire season. And hitting-wise is where they've added several bats. That's big. We'll see through fall ball what exactly that may look like by way of the new lineup. But like I say, plenty more to come on the softball front. Baseball also has its fall game, one of its fall games, on Sunday. So softball, for those who want to take a look at it, it's softball against College of the, and I'm going to butcher the pronunciation here, Siskiyous?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes, Siskiyous. You got it.
Okay. I remember them playing them last fall, so I had a, I'll say I cheated in that I barely have memory of that. But yes, College of the Siskiyous.
Yes.
At 10 a.m. Sunday at Jane Sanders. That game free. Baseball has its first fall game, 1 o'clock Sunday at PK Park against Sac State. That also free, like I say. So if you want to check those out, I will be doing my darndest to make it to both. I will start at 1, and as soon as the softball team wraps up, it's what is a 10-inning scrimmage. So in fall ball, you can make up the rules as you go, because these aren't legitimate games. The whole point is to get exhibitions, and the scores are relevant, because even if Oregon wins 30 or 40 to nothing, which is possible in softball, trust me, even if it did, that's not the point. It's about execution, and it's about game planning, and it's about working counts and hitting pitch locations and other things. So it has nothing to do with the outcome. The outcome is a foregone conclusion. So if you want to check those out, we mentioned those because, like I say, spent some time around that this week, including earlier this afternoon. But to first and foremost, to start the show today, yes, as we did yesterday, we talked about the Major League Baseball playoffs underway. First one being the National League Wild Card game. That was quite entertaining. Well, last night you got the American League Wild Card game, and I understand for those on the West Coast in particular, and those in this state in particular, if you are hoping for the Oakland A's to end up in Portland, you may or may not have wanted the A's to win or lose last night. I really don't know. I'm not sure which team winning or losing was going to lead you to a more likely franchise movement. I don't think the game had any impact on that whatsoever.
I think Portland people would be happy with both, either one of them. So,
Well, I'll tell you right now, they'll be really happy with the Rays because they're moving on.
Yep.
And the way they played last night, and really all season, but last night in particular, against an A's team that, look, I know that the A's obviously carry greater cachet by way of national branding and whatnot, mainly because of Moneyball, let's face it. If it weren't for that, they wouldn't carry much. They just wouldn't. It was, what are the chapters in Oakland A's history? The Bash Brothers and Ricky Henderson are around that, and Moneyball and Billy Beane, etc. And then
Reggie Jackson in the 70s.
And nobody alive associates Reggie Jackson with the Oakland A's. Nobody. First thing you think of when you think Reggie Jackson is not the Oakland A's.
But if you're going backwards,
right.
That's all.
The point is, like,
before he went to the Yankees,
in the franchise history, there's not a ton, and hell, even the Bash Brothers. In as time has gone on, obviously, history has not treated them as kindly due to the means by which they went about bashing.
Vitamin B12 shots.
And a few other things. So they take it on the chin in a tough one last night for the A's because they're the team that's supposed to have the pop in the bats. They're the team that, again, is they're the Moneyball team. And they're still not exactly that way today, but a lot of the principles still do apply. And when they are in the postseason, and I'll say even different points during the season when they're a competitive team and competitive organization, they do have fans that show up. No, not enough for a building that big. That's ridiculous. But ultimately, if they had a smaller building, perhaps in a different part of that town, I know they've gone on and on and on. It's never going to happen in Oakland, and that's besides the point. They have a following that can be very passionate. It can be very loud. Absolutely. It showed that at times early last night. But the Rays did everything they needed to do to take the crowd out of that game as fast as possible. Literally a leadoff home run. And then from there on, you get multiple homers from a guy who barely played in the last 3 months. No, a terrific performance by a Rays team that really doesn't have a ton of pop in its bats, and lo and behold, gets 4 home runs in a wild card game. Now, having said that was entertaining. It was an entertaining game. I do question, as others have as well today, basically not just either one of the wild card games, just inherently because of the nature of things. They're going to face the top-seeded teams from the season. But does any of it matter other than the short term of this team won, this team lost, this team's season's over, and this team moves on to play the top team in the American or National League, respectively? The Nats playing the Dodgers, the A's playing, the Rays playing the Astros. Probably not. Probably. I mean, look, they still play the games. And there's something to be said for a team with the lowest payroll in baseball that has been assembled the way it has been in Tampa, moving on, particularly to take on a team like the Astros who have a ton of payroll. A ton. And yes, the Yankees are still around there, and yes, the Dodgers are still around there. But for the avid baseball fan, and I know there are baseball fans in the Northwest, there are baseball fans in Eugene and in Oregon and in Seattle. And I know that certainly this was not the last few years as heavily in the Seattle area, just as far as the passion of it, because the Mariners have not been as good. But to the extremely passionate baseball fan, whether you're out here in the Pacific Northwest or you're in particular in the East Coast, where there are select baseball pockets that are extreme, there is a feeling like the big three are on a collision course and everything else. And whether you want to say that's a feeling of superiority, a feeling of basically ego from fans there that say, look, while you're looking past. Well, to be honest, with the way those teams have played this season, you kind of can understand why some of those fan bases are like, hey, just let me know when the ALCS starts and the Yankees and Astros are playing each other, basically. Because let's put it this way, I can't really argue to the contrary. I'd love to tell you that the Yankees and Twins is going to be this unbelievably competitive series, but one, as a Yankee fan, I really hope that it's not. And it's been a minute since the Yankees have won a World Series. It's been a minute since they've had a terribly competitive team that could win a World Series.
Oh.
It was 10 years ago.
Oh,
in that franchise history.
I'm a Dodgers fan.
Well,
I'm a Dodgers fan. It's been 30 years, man.
yeah, except they've made it to the postseason year after year after year after year, and they've lost many times in the last decade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah, it does. But not for lack of major payroll or anything
we haven't
else.
won a pennant in 10 years.
No. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm saying that here's what the last 10 years has brought about. And believe me, we're not going to go on and on.
No.
Because one, it's baseball, and it is not a baseball market overall as far as professionally and in season. And because I know nothing gets people checked out faster than Northeastern just waxing poetic about baseball. But
no comment.
What this has done in a positive light, as someone who grew up as a Yankees fan and still is this has helped at times over the last decade to, I won't say weed out exactly, because the last 2 or 3 years has probably ramped it up a bit more. And again, look, I'm not there. I've barely spent any time the last 10 years back home. But it helped to weed out some folk who were the bandwagon type, who really couldn't name very much of franchise history or even the current lineup or anything like that. And look, I'm not looking at it every single day because I'm too damn busy. But for the fan who is out there who gets perceived, like nationally, it's like, oh, well, whether you're the Lakers fan and Lakers fan's a perfect example actually here for the West Coast. There was a long time with the Lakers were the dominant franchise, one of the few dominant franchises in the NBA, one of the dominant franchises in professional sport. When they were hitting on all cylinders, I'm sure there were plenty of people who were riding that wave. Same thing goes now with the Warriors. Are you telling me that people who were riding the wave of the Warriors the last 5, 6, 7 years, that they could really tell you what the lineup was in the 93 organization?
There's bandwagon fans in every sport.
Everywhere. They come out of the woodwork.
Even Duck fans.
But and again, it happens everywhere. That's part of it. Success breeds interest and hangers on. That's all part of it. I understand that. But point is that as someone who grew up with it, and you do go through the good, and that was great, and then you go through the lean years, and you see an organization reinvent itself and retool and reconfigure and reload correctly after many years of dead-end salaries. It's fun to finally see a team that's younger and not a bunch of 35-year-olds with $20 million contracts. That's fun. That's enjoyable. So we will look at the baseball playoffs when it happens. Last note on that being that our guy, Mattress Mac, did wager an additional $1.5 million in New Jersey. So he has over $5 million in action for over $11 million in payouts if the Astros win the World Series. Again,
wow.
As we explained, that is one very large hedge bet. So essentially, if they do win, he gets to win that. Yes, there's tax taken out all over the country. And I can only imagine what the tax attorney will have to tell him with all that if they win.
Yeah.
If they don't, well, then, yeah, he loses that money, but then his stores just brought on all that additional revenue that he doesn't have to refund. So that's the whole point of the hedge. So our guy, he's got quite a bit of money tied up as a hedge on potential earnings or not.
That's just crazy, though.
It is. But hey, he must be running quite the business.
Must be nice.
Yeah, no kidding. What a nice problem to have.
Yeah.
Coming up on today's show, it's a jam-packed show. We've got Sean Keeler coming up momentarily. He covers Colorado for the Denver Post. We'll chat with him. Right after him, we'll have Michael Lev, who covers Arizona for the Arizona Daily Star. Those two teams playing in what I've called a sneaky competitive and important game in the Pac-12 South. During the 5 o'clock hour, we'll have Aaron McMann on from M Live, covers Michigan. Dargan Southard covers Iowa for the Des Moines Register. We'll chat with those guys because of another top 25 matchup. As we say, loaded show here on this Thursday. Thanks for listening so far. And I believe we may have something.
We do.
We do. So as we did yesterday, if you are listening and you listened yesterday, you could tune in to win a pair of tickets to Saturday's game between Oregon and Cal. Well, we're doing it again. And if you want to know what time today, just as you did yesterday, you can follow me on Twitter, send me a message, say what time you're giving away the Ducks tickets, and I'll let you know. Otherwise, keep listening, and we'll tell you when to call in on the Davis Roofing Hotline. You're listening to the James Crepea Show on Fox Sports Eugene. We welcome back to the program Colorado beat reporter Sean Keeler from the Denver Post. You can follow him on Twitter at Sean Keeler. That's Keeler. Welcome back to the show, Sean.
Hey, thanks, guys. How is it up there?
Pretty good. Today is, let's just say, a typical Northwestern weather day. So we hope when you come around these parts next week that you're not dealing with the same as it is today. Because it's in the 50s and raining, and while that's typical for the region, it's a little early for my taste. I wouldn't mind if it were like this in November or December, but first week of October, I'd prefer it to be just plain sunny. Would be a nice change.
Yeah, I would take that too. My little brother just moved to Eugene, so I've got family ties for that game next Friday. So we're looking forward to that.
For sure. And in the meantime, certainly a pretty big one this weekend as well for Colorado with Arizona. What is the feeling in Boulder these days after a 3-1 start overall and a 1-0 start to Pac-12 play?
Well, I'll just give you an idea. They're talking about selling this out, and that would give them 2 sellouts. I want to say, again, I'm relatively new to the market, but I think it's the first time almost a decade at Folsom, so we're going back to the Hawk. You're rolling back that far at least. So it's family weekend. There's, for as many injuries as they've had, it's been, for a glass that's half full, they're definitely exiting the half full part. I think people are still kind of basking in the almost receiving boats club. They like that, and when you do something you haven't done before as a program and get a road win and get to 1-0 in the league, and your coach is the first guy since Rick Neuheisel to beat 2 ranked teams in his first month on the job, I think it's still pretty funny.
Yeah, I would think so, because this is, and let's face it, this was viewed as one of the big rebuilds, even with Montez and Shenault back and Mustafa Johnson back. This was still viewed as one of the big rebuilds in the league, and you would have been hard-pressed to find very many people out there that thought Colorado was going to start 3-1. In particular with the Nebraska game and trip to Arizona State. So far, Mel Tucker has more than delivered in his first month on the job.
Yeah, you're right. Those are the two. And I think it's not sometimes, what did we talk a couple weeks ago? We said that it's not, if you're in a first season, it's not always the quantity, it's the quality of what people are going to stick with. If you're going to pick one game to win, CSU would be up there. But it's Nebraska. They did. And whatever happens, it's going to be asterisk, and they beat Nebraska, and that's what's going to go in the media guide and what's going to go out to recruits, what they can send. And then winning at ASU, it feels like, it's like a bonus. I think that's what people felt like. Okay, great. This, like they're just stunned that this could even be possible because they never won in Tempe. I think that's some of that little sunshine is at least those 3 of them. Want to get, and they're 2 plays away from being 4-0 if you want to be optimistic. Now, conversely, if Scott Frost takes a kicker on the road, they're probably a kick away from being 2-2. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're right. There's those 2 swings where, on one hand, they were very close to being able to pull off what would have been a win over Air Force, which I think by the end of the year, right now, Air Force also 3-1. I think by the end of the year, though, Air Force is still going to make that look like a more than respectable loss.
I agree.
But that said, it's still a game that, Colorado could have had it. They could be 4-0. You're right. Nebraska also could have won that game. Could have gone the other way. Let's start with the injury updates, though, Sean, and it's because it's significant on both sides. But the Colorado side, Shenault and Mustafa Johnson, what is the latest on 2 of the superstars for Colorado?
Yeah, this is where the gamesmanship comes in. This is kind of the Belichick Bowl, maybe a little bit between UA and CU, if you're following the Pac-12 games, because I think both sides are going to put off saying what's really going on until as long as conceivably possible. In Boulder, they're both officially listed as a game-time decision. Chris Miller is, I think, officially questionable, the cornerback. I wouldn't hedge your bets on any of those 3 playing in this game, but if you get one and you're a CU fan and you're Mel Tucker, you're going to feel pretty good because the reports and what's been floating around Boulder County about Laviska Shenault, his injury, are a lot worse than CU is letting on. And when CU has been, probably for business, obviously for business reasons and competitive reasons and for the kids' reasons, because, again, he has an NFL future, has been very – I mean, we're not even getting the hockey upper body injury vagueness. We're just getting undisclosed. Privately, it's been disclosed. It's not death-defying, but it would be remarkable if he's out there on Saturday. Let's put it that way.
And that would certainly be disappointing in the short term, for sure, for Shenault. And I can tell you already that because Colorado is coming to Eugene a week from now for the Friday night game, that there is a humongous list of scouts set to come in, mainly to watch potentially Shenault play the Oregon secondary. And if they get to watch basically Oregon only without Shenault, they're going to be a little disappointed because there's going to be quite a large number of NFL personnel. So, yes, this week is first, but Oregon fans are going to be watching with a captive eye, and I think a lot of NFL executives who are potentially showing up in Eugene a week from now watching with a captive eye to see if this young man plays or not.
Yeah, I will have a few this weekend, too, for obvious reasons. And there are guys on the Wildcat sideline they want to get a look at, too. I mean, it's an interesting kind of chess game if you're Mel Tucker. If you've got, say, weeks, let's just say in the cases of both Shenault and Johnson, you heard multiple weeks. Again, undisclosed, wink on one and high ankle on the other. I mean, this is a game that you're more likely to get than next week. This is a game that's a division game that's more important, ostensibly. But next week's the marquee matchup. So, you want to get them all, but this is kind of the thing where it's a 6-pointer in the Premier League. You guys familiar with that concept?
Yes.
For a relegation
Yes.
side,
Yes,
it's kind of
sir.
a 6-pointer for a mid-range bowl game. And yet you could be 2-0 in the South, which is crazy. Whoever comes out of this in the South is not nationally relevant, but equally bonkers. It's the Pacific Coast version of the Big Ten West. So you want to get that out of there, get a leg up on that as best you can, too, especially at home, especially in front of a good crowd. So I don't know. You might be tempted to if you think you can play if they get in the second half without those two guys, even though they've missed Johnson a lot more, strangely enough, because they just aren't very deep and are really, really young up front defensively, that, maybe you roll the dice and do that because you're at home, because you want to be as healthy as you can going to Eugene because you're going to be pushing uphill anyway.
I'm chatting with Sean Keeler of the Denver Post, covers Colorado. Sean, if Shenault and Mustafa Johnson in particular can't go, what does this team look like passing-wise? On the depth chart, they list Daniel Arias behind Shenault at the exit receiver. Behind Mustafa Johnson at DN, they've got Naeem Rodman, a freshman, roughly the same size and stature, but there's still obviously the game experience is an enormous difference there. What does this team look like if these two, like I say, these two stars, if they can't play, what does this look like?
I think Arias, and it's going to get some of those snaps. I think you're going to see, or they're going to hope for a lot more of what they got out of Tony Brown. 3 scores in Tempe. He becomes a primary guy out of that X slot, and KD is KD. When he's pretty good, it gives him a great second option, and when he's not there, like the Air Force game, they struggle. So I think at least not this coaching staff, but the guys who've been here last year kind of had a contingency plan for this before, and that there is some good bodies on the skill position side. An offensive line, you mentioned Rodman. You're going to throw the guy I wrote about this morning, Austin Williams, a true freshman. He's been getting about 16 snaps a game in that rotation in their 3-4 front. They think they'll use him at the nose and maybe outside some, or switch some other guys outside. And then he thinks he might get 30, 35 snaps because he's been running pretty much all week with the ones. So you're going to see more kids shuttling there. And that is a particular, again, there's more of that in today's Denver Post. That's a tricky matchup where UA is concerned, because I think they've run for like an average of 380 yards against these guys the last 2 years. And they just light it up on the ground, and you're going to send a bunch of kids into that fray. That in basketball terms, that doesn't portend well. That's a matchup problem. And we saw what Air Force was able to do with obviously a different, straight up kind of option thing, but similarly that kind of execution. It's not it's not a great run D team as it is, and you're hitting them really where they hurt there. So, as your buddies would say, if there's ever an over to run in the Pac-12 this week, this is it. These two defenses and where these two offenses are relative to them.
I've been calling this game a unbelievably sneaky, important game for the Pac-12 South, Sean, because the winner moves to 4-1 overall, 2-0 in the league. The loser not just drops to 3-2, 1-1. It's the prospect of whether it's Colorado coming to Autzen a week from now or Arizona hosting Washington a week from now. The prospect of dropping from 3-1, 1-0 to 3-3, 1-2 in the span of about 8 days. That would be pretty brutal. So the swing involved in this game could be rather enormous. Does that encapsulate truly how important, like heading into the season, I don't think very many people would have said the Colorado-Arizona game was going to be this critical, swing game, but it is shaping up to be an unbelievably important swing game for both of these teams.
This is a good middleweight. This is a good undercard. For where the middle of those bull bids 4 through 6 are holding in the league in the best. So yeah, it's weird how that stuff will sneak up on you and suddenly go, oh, this is a really, and all the computers and all the matchups, they go, this is a really good game. It shocks you the way that, Cal would do some of those recently. You'd be like, oh, they're pretty good. We got to check this out. Yeah, if you're a football junkie, although maybe not if you're a defensive junkie, whether you're a Pac-12 person or not, I think you're going to, it'll go back and forth. It'll be nuts.
We'll get you out of here on this, Sean. How do you think this one goes? Because Colorado is still favored. Now, granted, Arizona's dealing with injuries to Khalil Tate and J.J. Taylor. Their status uncertain. I think that's part of it. But that said, we were just talking about at length how Colorado's dealing with a lot of injuries to their major players as well. So how do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, there's no way it isn't going to be high scoring. When you say that, and there'll be a snowstorm and it's 17-10. No, it's not going to be that. It's kind of a first one to 35. And now it's sort of can hold on to keep the other guy from 40 more than it is first one to 35. So, who gets it last on a kick? We're due for the Buffs to win one on a kick here with their veteran guy and to kind of take it from there. So let's say CU 37-34 late, and we get another field storming, and they really are last year's Sun Devils after all. You know what I mean? They turn out to be that first-year surprise. So let's hold on that.
Appreciate it as always, Sean. Look forward to chatting with you and seeing you next week when the Buffs come to Eugene. Thanks again.
Sounds good. Take care, guys.
You're listening to the James Crepea Show on Fox Sports Eugene. We now welcome back to the show Michael Lev, covers the Arizona Wildcats for the Arizona Daily Star. You can follow him on Twitter at Michael J. Lev. Welcome back to the show, sir.
Thanks for having me. How are you?
Good. How about yourself?
Not bad. Just, gearing up for the game that will determine who's in the lead in the Pac-12 South.
I was going to say, yeah.
Saturday.
Yeah, this is, we'll start in the reverse order. We were just chatting with Sean Keeler of the Denver Post, covers Colorado to get one side of the game. Now we get the other. As I ended up talking with Sean, yeah, this is the sneaky, competitive, and important game in the Pac-12 South, Michael, and that, yeah, you just hit on it. I mean, they're both 3-1 and 1-0. The winner moves to 4-1, 2-0. The loser not only drops a game back, but because of the matchups a week from now, Arizona hosting Washington, Colorado traveling here to Oregon, the loser could be facing a 3-3, 1-2 record in the span of 8 days. So the swing involved in this game could be really enormous.
That's absolutely true. And weren't these two teams picked 5th and 6th by the media?
Yep.
In the Pac-12 South, I feel like that was the case. But, when we looked at that division heading into the season, I feel like the consensus was Utah's the best team, and then the rest is a jumble. And I still think we're kind of in that jumble phase right now. A lot is to be determined just because Arizona or Colorado will be in the lead in the South. If the weekend doesn't mean they're going to be in the lead in the South by the end of the season. The really hard part of Arizona's schedule is still to come. They still have to go to Oregon later in the season. They got Washington coming in. They've got back-to-back trips to USC and Stanford coming up. So, like you said, to kind of look ahead, it adds even more importance to this particular matchup.
Let's get to the injury front, Michael. What is the latest on Khalil Tate and J.J. Taylor?
Yeah, well, just, so your audience has some context, we are not allowed to watch practice at all during the course of the week. And we also we don't have access to Coach Kevin Sutton after Monday. Injury information is hard to come by. I would say my best guess, based on intuition and intel, is that Khalil Tate is probably going to give it a go Saturday. I don't think this was a major long-term type of injury that he had last week. He did do some stuff during practice, just wasn't quite ready. My guess, I'd put it maybe like 51% to 49% that we're heading in the Tate direction. Again, at quarterback, the concern you have, of course, is him re-injuring the hamstring and making it worse and making it something where he misses a month. So they're going to be cautious. They're going to be careful. And even if they feel like he could today, you still have to test that thing, after practice or during practice tonight, after practice, during walkthrough or whatever they have going on Friday, all the way up until game time. The good news is, they feel pretty good about the freshman Grant Gunnell after his performance against UCLA. Completed 29 of 44 passes, 352 yards, 1 touchdown, no turnovers. Really did a good job of managing the game. The question is, could he do that on the road? Right? It's just much harder for offenses and especially for young quarterbacks to excel.
Chatting with Michael Lev of the Arizona Daily Star, covers the Arizona Wildcats as they prepare to take on Colorado. Michael, what is the feeling? Because you mentioned, yes, Gunnell leads a win over UCLA that was quite impressive. And this team that, like you mentioned, this was a team that not much was expected of. And basically anything they got out of the defense was going to be considered a positive. They do contain a, albeit banged up and not terribly great-looking UCLA team, though they were coming off a unbelievable offensive performance at Wazoo the week before. But for the rest of the season, not a very good offense at UCLA. And look, this is a team that's 3-1 and started off with a win, and I know it's a part of a rebuild. So what's the feeling in the desert right now heading into this one that, hey, after the month of September, it's been a minute since Arizona lost at Hawaii. This is a team that could have been 4-0 very easily.
Yeah, it almost feels like that Hawaii game was part of a separate season, doesn't it? Because the game took place, in week 0. They've had 2 bye weeks since then. It does feel like it's been a while. And I feel like there's a certain confidence that the team has right now, especially the defense, which was really widely and roundly criticized after the Hawaii game, which really was, the 3rd game in a row, if you go back to last season, where they did not perform up to any sort of standard. They struggled too, in the second half of the game against Northern Arizona, but you have to put that in some context. The game was basically over at halftime. I think it was 51-13 or something like that at the half. So they weren't really game planning or as intense as they normally would be. They played a lot of guys who haven't really played very much since. But it's been different the last 2 weeks. They've really been locked in defensively. They've played really sound. They've executed their assignments. They've taken the ball away on a fairly regular basis. The key for me, for them defensively heading into this game Saturday, is can they get pressure on Steven Montez? I think we saw what happened a couple weeks ago. When you don't get pressure on Steven Montez, he can really tear you apart. And that's what happened to Arizona State. No sacks in that game. He walked away with a clean uniform. If he walks away from this game with a clean uniform, I think Colorado's probably going to win.
Segues nicely to my next question, Michael, which was, to the matchup with, that Montez is going to be there, whether or not he has Shenault or not. It sounds like more likely than not he will not have Shenault to aim for, but Colorado certainly has some other weapons still available by way of targets, and Montez is still one of the better quarterbacks in this league. And on the defensive side, Colorado could be without Mustafa Johnson. If it sounds like, talking to Sean Keeler, that's going to be the case. Could also be without one of its starting corners. How do you see Arizona matching up and dealing with its own injury cases, but how do you see them matching up with Colorado, who could be without some of its major star players?
Yeah, it's such a big theme of this game, injuries on both sides. Obviously, when you're talking about a quarterback situation like with Arizona, and you're talking about two quarterbacks who have completely different styles, that's really the most impactful of those injuries. Of course, Colorado having or not having Laviska Shenault is a big deal. They didn't have them in last year's matchup. They have other receivers who are very capable. Tony Brown is having a great year for the Buffaloes, and Katie Nixon is a dangerous threat out of the slot. And as someone who could take a jet sweep and get around the end of the defense, that sort of thing. What makes Shenault unique is the ways that they utilize him. They will use him in the Wildcat formation. He's probably their best short yardage runner. And a lot of times these types of games come down to, a 3rd and 1 here or a 4th and 1 there. So, advantage Arizona if Shenault is unavailable. If J.J. Taylor doesn't play for the Wildcats, obviously a really good running back, but they have 4 other really good running backs that they like and that they feel completely confident in. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I don't as well as the Arizona defense has played lately. There's still history that says that they don't play as well on the road. So, I'm not as confident in that side as I would be if it was a home game. Then you add in the Colorado injuries, most of them being on the defensive side of the ball. I think it's going to be a shootout. And, I would love to say that Arizona is going to go in there and pull out a win. I think they're certainly capable of it. Just not knowing exactly what's going to happen with the quarterback situation, I just can't pull the trigger on picking the Wildcats for this one. So I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think Colorado's going to win.
We'll get you out of here on this, Michael. With that said, if it does go that way and it's higher scoring, because both you and, like I say, Sean Keeler from the Colorado side also feels it's going to be higher scoring, but they're basically playing with house money in Boulder by way of coaching staff right now, and starting off 3-1, and also a team that could have been 4-0. They're really playing with house money. But there was already criticism of Marcel Yates only a couple of weeks ago. Last time we had you on, we were talking about his job security. So if this is high scoring, as both of you guys are predicting, and Arizona ends up on the losing side and then follows it up with another loss next week to Washington, at the midpoint of the season, is this defensive coordinator going to be roasted on the hot seat again?
Yeah, no, I think he will be. I mean, I think it's just a very, very much a week-to-week type in college football with certain programs. And that's kind of where we're at with Arizona and its defense and its defensive coordinator. And, they performed great against Texas Tech and UCLA. They held both opponents under 20 points. I mean, I feel like if they can hold Colorado in the 20s, they've got a really good shot of winning this game. If it gets to be 30 or over, then it's up for grabs. And I think that, the criticism is going to come Marcel Yates' way again. The one thing I will say is that it's a pretty veteran group on defense. So they don't have a lot of seniors, but they have a lot of guys who've played a ton of football. And they really seem like they're playing for their coordinator, someone who a lot of the players advocated to be the head coach when the search was going on, and Kevin Sumlin was ultimately the guy. So they're going to go down fighting.
Appreciate you as always, Michael. Look forward to having you on again. Thanks again, man.
Thanks.
You're listening to the James Crepea Show on Fox Sports Eugene. We thank Sean Keeler and Michael Lev for joining us again. Those guys do a great job covering their respective programs at Colorado and Arizona. Again, they both captured this side of this weekend's game in a really, really nice way. And like I've been saying all week, this is really a sneaky, important game. Sean had a nice line there saying, yeah, this is kind of like one of those middle card, fights in a boxing card.
Middleweight fight.
This is not the deciding game necessarily, but yeah, it really is. This carries significant importance. So it's not the main event, and it may not even be the co-main event, but it's somewhere maybe frankly, it may be the number 3 or 4 most important game in the division this season, which no one would have believed.
Nope.
in June, July, or August. You got to be kidding.
Well, even after week 1 or 2, the way Arizona,
Exactly.
I mean, just no way.
No. So, look, it's a funny game. That's why they play the game. And, again, the winner's going to be in an awfully nice spot, at least for a week, understanding that Colorado's got to come here a week later, understanding that Arizona's got to host Washington a week later. But the winner's going to be in an awfully nice spot at 4-1 and 2-0 in the Pac-12. The loser, it will definitely test that team's mettle between both the injuries they're currently dealing with and then the high likelihood that they drop to 3-3, 1-2 a week from now. Not once whether it's Colorado coming here to Eugene or Arizona hosting Washington. Yeah, those teams are going to be put to the test. But are they going to be completely out of the divisional race? Well, not right now.
Yeah.
Not the way SC and Utah are playing. No. It ain't over by a long ways. Not even close. But the winner really puts themselves in a pretty advantageous position. So, yeah, we'll definitely pay close attention to that game on Saturday. Frankly, right now, Steve, as we head into tomorrow, I don't know which side of that game I'm picking and hold all tickets tomorrow. Well, I don't know. Colorado's favored by 4, and I really have no idea which way I'm going in this game.
After hearing these guys, I don't. I mean, because I was thinking there's no way there's going to be a ton of points put up in this game, and now I'm like, oh man, they make the over under of 61.5 sound like it needs to be 10 points higher. Yeah.
And look, that doesn't mean they're going to be dead on right. They could both prove completely wrong.
Right.
But they've got more insight into either one of them than I do, that's for sure. And they're telling you, take the over in a long way. So, and if it does, under those circumstances, I probably lean towards Colorado because 1, they're at home, and 2, because at least what Montez is bringing to the table as a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And Tucker is a defensive guy, even if he's missing 1 or 2 major pieces against an Arizona team that may or may not have its quarterback and running back, but still has other weapons on offense. Yeah, if it's the higher scoring it goes, I think the more it favors Colorado, as long as Tate doesn't play.
Right. If Tate plays,
this could be the next Wazoo UCLA.
Yeah.
This really could be bonkers. Which I'm sure Mel Tucker will just be gouging his own eyes out if it goes that direction. But nevertheless, no, it could be a bonkers game. For a 1:30 Pacific time game on Pac-12 Network, this is one that folks should really be tuning into within the league because this is really is. It's a sneaky important game in that division, man. It's
going to be a nice warm-up for your TV viewing before Oregon and Cal.
Yeah, if you're tailgating outside the stadium, look, there's some top 25 games going on as well. But if you're tailgating outside the stadium and you want to have one of the local games on, one of the local teams on, this is definitely the one to pay attention to for sure, without question. Talking to and about this game, obviously here on Saturday. Again, we are giving away another pair of tickets to that game during today's show. We did yesterday. We will again today. So keep listening and be ready to call the Davis Roofing Hotline at 541-343-KORE. That's 541-343-5673. When we say that we're giving away the tickets, you give us a call. And I think yesterday we did the 5th caller, and I think we'll probably do that when the time comes up. We will probably
wait for it.
But we will probably do that again later in the show today as well. But to shift gears back to this weekend's game with Oregon and Cal, I know a lot has been made about obviously the change of quarterbacks, as it should. When a team loses a quarterback and there's a new one coming in, I'm not saying pay no mind to it. Of course, it matters. But I still, this is just my 2 cents. I think defensively, while you obviously have to pay attention to something like that, and Garbers was playing the best football of his career the prior 2 weeks, there's still some context to that. While you can sympathize with the fact that the young man got hurt and you hate to see that, let's not quite bill him up as an irreplaceable piece either. Or that the backup here coming in, Monster, is going to be, completely incapable?
No, he's proved the opposite.
Now look, I know in the second half last week against ASU he didn't do very well, and that's okay, that happens. But this was an offense that was not exactly hitting on all cylinders in the first place, that had struggled to put up a bunch of points way before Chase Garbers got hurt. So, yes, he was playing his best football. It would have been really spectacular had Cal won last week and been able to come into Autzen in that much of a better position with its starting quarterback from a pure entertainment standpoint, for sure. And from a competitive standpoint, as far as the meaning to a potential win for Oregon. However, let's not bill Garbers out to be this. Look, he probably wasn't even a top 5 quarterback in the league. He may have been on his way to that. We won't know, unfortunately, because his season is going to be highly impacted, if not completely shortened, due to this injury. But I'm just saying, let's not compare the loss of Chase Garbers to Stanford's loss of KJ Costello, okay? That's all I'm saying.
That's fair.
There is a difference, okay? Now, because it does really impact one team versus the other in a little bit of a different light as far as the caliber of the ability of one player versus the other. Not talking about the human side of it. Again, all injuries stink. That's a given. But let's just not make Garbers out to be this all-American caliber quarterback just yet, okay? It stinks that he's out, but Oregon's defense is still going to have an advantage on paper heading into this one regardless. Now, its advantage be that much bigger against Devin Monster? Probably. But I think the thing that matters most with Devin Monster is that he is less mobile than Garbers, and that against Stanford 2 weeks ago, against a veteran quarterback in Costello who did elude some pressure from the Oregon defense, Monster may not be able to do that as well. And that is something that this Oregon defense has to feast on, has to capitalize on. Because if you have a taller and less mobile quarterback back there, particularly one without game experience, a ton of game experience, and a ton of experience running this particular offense, yeah, you have got to capitalize. You have got to get home. You can't be within half a step. You've got to get all the way there and then some. So we'll continue chatting about that and more coming up. Again, Aaron McMann of MLive covers Michigan. Dargan Southard of the Des Moines Register covers Iowa. They'll join us to talk about that top 25 matchup and more coming up. You're listening to the James Crepea Show here on Fox Sports Eugene.
This is the James Crepea Show.
Most of the time, just eat, play, sleep, and then just do it again.
Oregon Duck beat reporter for the Oregonian, James Crepea.
Yeah, hopefully we have some big wins early this season. That'll mean you've been a better commissioner.
He graduated from Ohio State and covered Auburn. We'll try not to hold it against him. KORE 1050 and 95.7, Fox Sports Eugene. Here is the James Crepea Show, presented by Dairy Mart.
Giving you an update on the baseball game underway as the National League Division Series fires up. Atlanta and St. Louis in Game 1 of that series underway in Hotlanta. And the Cardinals are now within a run, so it is 3-2 Bravos, bottom 8 at SunTrust Park in the Marietta area of Atlanta, Georgia. We'll keep you posted as that one will undoubtedly wrap up while we're on the air here in Game 1 of the National League Division Series. And again, we'll probably just kind of touch base peripherally.
Don't jinx it now.
On the baseball postseason throughout the postseason. Now, I will say this. If one of the big three, probably two, all right. If two of the big three, either one of the two, but especially two.
And who are the big three?
The big three being the Astros, Yankees, and Dodgers.
Okay.
if two of the big three specifically, but one in particular, but I'll appease the second one, make it to the World Series, we will do our darndest to have on reporters who cover those teams. Because during the World Series, during a championship series, I just think that regardless of what market, there's people watching. I'm not going to tell you that there wouldn't be more people watching if certain teams weren't in it versus others. But look, I know that this is not a pro baseball market, and that they're, the closest team is the Mariners, and the Mariners are not in it, and obviously the A's are now out of it as well, and the Giants aren't part of it. So there's not a lot to exactly from a local interest standpoint. But when the Dodgers are one of them, and there are some national brands elsewhere involved, yes, if those teams make it to the World Series, then we will definitely do our darndest to have on reporters who cover those franchises on a, I'm not going to say daily basis, but we will hope to have them on during the World Series, okay? We'll do our best. In particular, if the Pinstripes happen to make it, I'll just say. Because, it's been a minute. Continuing the conversation, though, as we're just having about Oregon and Cal and the change of quarterbacks for Cal and what does Devin Modster bring to the table and et cetera. Again, I think the biggest thing for this Oregon defense, and this was going to hold true if Chase Garbers was there, but he was more mobile. But it's especially true and important this week for the Oregon front four. The best pass rushers on this team. The names that everyone talked about in the offseason. And I'm not just putting it on anyone, believe me. It's not just about a 5-star freshman. It's not. That's completely unfair. When your leading returning player is still holding on to the starting job, he's got, I believe it's 1.5 sacks for Gus Cumberlander so far. Not telling you that's good, not telling you that's bad. It's what he's got, okay? And when you've gotten a half sack from Kayvon Thibodeau, where he split it at Stanford in one of the sacks they recorded in that game, the Ducks as a whole have 15 sacks. That leads the Pac-12. As a team, they also lead the Pac-12 in tackles for loss with 33. Those are terrific numbers. They're getting home. They're disrupting opposing offenses. They are affecting opposing quarterbacks. However, there's two prongs to that. They have it in mass. They don't have it in the individuals that we were all expecting to have major contributions in that capacity. So far, it's only the first 4 games. Mace Funa, who leads the team in sacks with 3 and is tied for and actually also has the team lead in tackles for loss with 5. Well, almost all of that damage was done against Montana and Nevada. And that's not taken away from Funa. Funa's contributions were huge. But they were against those opponents. Against the legitimate opponents in Auburn and Stanford, the impact was felt far less by this front 4. So while the overall numbers are really good, some of it has been a little bit of feasting and bolstering of stats against, I'll say it, god-awful teams. And if that makes somebody at Nevada upset somehow, some way, well, tough. Those teams stink. This is a defense that should be able to feast on them. And they did, and that's terrific. That's great. But now that you're facing your league schedule from here on out, and now that the games are this much more important from here on out, it is time for your veteran players and your vaunted defensive edge players to raise their level of play. They've got to get home now. And at Stanford, some of the keys within the game that I watched at Stanford from up in the press box, what I was watching through my binoculars at Stanford Stadium, when the Oregon defense was playing was specific individual matchups with a dinged-up Stanford offensive line that had freshmen starting at a couple of spots, but especially at the left tackle spot. I'm watching when Kayvon Thibodeau's getting out there. I'm watching when Lamar Winston Jr. is getting out there. When Austin Falliou, who was dealing with a minor injury, was getting out there on the inside. I was paying attention to when those guys were out there, how were they doing against a freshman left tackle in some cases. And, yeah, at times did they get there? Yeah, at times they absolutely did. And did they impact KJ Costello in the course of ultimately really doing a pretty darn good job against the Stanford offense, all in all, especially in the passing game? Yeah, they did. But what I noticed, and I'd asked Mario Cristobal about it, and I asked Andy Avalos about it, was they, when I say that, let me be specific. Winston in particular, Thibodeau in particular, Cumberlander in particular, were at times within, fractions. They were very close, over and over again in some cases. Winston, I can still recall, I thought he was going to bring Costello down by the head. I thought he had him. They were really close to not just notching sacks. These were what would have been monumental plays, disruptive plays that would have been strip sacks, fumbles, turnovers, potentially scoop and scores, all kinds of things. But you don't get stats for almost. Yeah, you can still affect the opposing quarterback doing that, but if they break free or they step up and they elude the rush, then it's just something to watch on tape. It's something to correct. Against a quarterback with far less game experience, in particular at the program that he's at now. I don't want to hear about what he did at UCLA 2 years ago. It's about where he's at now and the offense he's in now. He has very little experience doing that. He doesn't have a ton of weapons. His offensive line is not very good. This defensive line, but especially the defensive edge players. That's Winston, that's Funa, that's Thibodeau, that's Cumberlander. And yes, there are others, but we're talking about the two deep. Those are the guys that have got to get home constantly, regularly throughout this game. You want to affect a inexperienced, big, and not terribly mobile quarterback. This, to me, is one of the big keys to the game from a true measuring point and assessment point. I wrote about it on OregonLive.com today. You can check out the story, and you can see what both Mario and Andy Avalos had to say about it. Because they both hit on, as I mentioned it to them, because, I saw it with my own two eyes. And there was no denying about it. They said, yeah, here's how things kind of unfurled, how they went about it. And, yes, that eliminating the smallest of steps of wasted movements can be enormous by way of returns. And that it's not only on them. No, it's on the interior, too, because if you get pushed from both the outside and the inside, then the quarterback's really in a bind. But it's the edge players who are there to make those plays. And they have made them as a defense-wide. They have made them as a collective group. But right now, the whole is absolutely proving bigger than the sum of its individual parts. It's time for those individual parts to start shining. This is an opponent ripe for the picking, an opponent you're expected to beat by 3 scores. You're at home. This quarterback, I'm not going to continue to keep knocking. I'm just continue to hit on the fact that he doesn't have experience. This is a daunting test and environment for him. Road test, one of the loudest stadiums in the league. Students are on campus, night game, national television, etc., etc. You have got to make him as uncomfortable as possible, as frequent as possible. And yeah, if the offense can indulge you and provide you a lead so that you can further tee off from the jump, so that you don't allow Cal to do not only what it did to start the second half against Arizona State, albeit in a loss, but also what Stanford did and try to take the air out of the ball and play possession football. Yeah, you hope the offense can indulge you and allow that to happen so that you can tee off that much more. But you've got to back this quarterback into some brutal spots and tough binds. Because the pass defense component to this, not just from skill and ability, Look at some of the numbers. Opponents are 2 of 14 on 3rd and 7 to 9 against this defense. They're 7 of 13 on 3rd and 10 plus. So they're not converting real well, opponents so far, against this Oregon defense. Get this inexperienced quarterback in some tough spots, and I think you're going to see individuals who everyone in the Duck fan base was expecting to have big seasons. I think you're going to start to hear some names called that you've been waiting on. We'll chat about that more later. We will have Aaron McMann of MLive.com, covers Michigan, coming up, and Dargan Southard covers Iowa for the Des Moines Register. Also coming up to chat about that top 25 matchup on Saturday. You're listening to the James Crepea Show on Fox Sports Eugene. We now welcome to the program Aaron McMann, covers Michigan for MLive.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Aaron McMann. That's McMann. Welcome to the show, Aaron.
Good evening, James. Good to be with you.
Appreciate it. Yes, this is a top 25 matchup with Michigan and Iowa this week. Several questions for both sides, really, but let's start with the Wolverines. What is the feeling in Ann Arbor these days, Aaron? Because it's 3-1 and 1-1 in the Big Ten, but boy, that 3-1 has been anything but confident. There's been a lot of suspect performances in there from the Army game that, frankly, Army should have won that game. The win over Rutgers last week, I'm sure, has done little to quell the Michigan fan base. What is the feeling nowadays?
No, I think you nailed it. I think there's some concern here in Ann Arbor. There's some concern whether or not Jim Harbaugh can really get this program, this Michigan football team, over the hump. They've been talking about it now for 4 years, whether he could bring them back to the college, the playoff, the Big Ten championship, whatever you want to say, and he hasn't been able to do it. They coming into the year, that the talk, here in Ann Arbor was how big of a leap this offense would take. They returned their starting quarterback. They returned a quartet of receivers, 4 of their 5 stars along the offensive line. They had a lot of playmakers come back. They decided to change the offense up a little bit to more of a spread scheme, something that the fans were clamoring for here in Ann Arbor just because of the receivers and the talent they had. They just haven't been able to kind of put it together much early on. We saw it the first half of the first game against Middle Tennessee State. They struggled against Army. You saw what happened at Wisconsin, and they were finally able to put it together last week against Rutgers. But again, it's Rutgers. So right now I think there's some folks are nervous. They're curious to see whether they can put it together. Because as the players acknowledged this week, one more loss, especially in the Big Ten slate, Michigan's dreams, basically go out the window.
Certainly from a playoff perspective, for sure. And even another loss, frankly, in league play, it makes winning the East that much more difficult, to be certain. What's the latest on the quarterback situation? Because I know last week there was the uncertainty with some injuries there. So what's the latest on the quarterback situation with Patterson and McCaffrey?
Yeah, all counts with Shea Patterson as he's healthy. There was some concern early in the first few weeks. I guess he was injured on the first play of the opener against Middle Tennessee State, some type of oblique injury. He played through it. He played through it the following week against Army. There was some concern going into the Wisconsin game, but he played through that as well. So, as far as we know, he will be the starter against Iowa on Saturday. McCaffrey, as far as we know, has been ruled out. I think Jim Harbaugh called him doubtful at the beginning of the week. The latest was he was still going through concussion protocol. He sat out the game against Rutgers. So it sounds like the backup going into Saturday will be Joe Milton, who we saw a little bit in the second half. He threw for a touchdown, rushed for a touchdown. But Michigan sounds like they'll be relatively healthy at the quarterback position.
Aaron, is this whole season for Michigan because of the narrative about Harbaugh and the ranked opponents and the big rivals, whether it's Michigan State or Penn State or Ohio State, Wisconsin when they get involved, obviously as they did a couple of weeks ago? Is this really all boiling down to these handful of games? So it was Wisconsin before, but now it's this Iowa game coming up, but it's going to be Michigan State, Ohio State, Penn State, Notre Dame. Is it really basically half the season is, all right, yeah, you won those games, but who cares? It's really about the other half?
Yeah, I mean, we all know, Harbaugh hasn't won a game against Ohio State yet. Michigan, it's been a long time since they've beaten the Buckeyes. They lost last year at Notre Dame. They've had some success against Michigan State, but they've struggled on the road against Penn State, who they play here in a couple of weeks. The narrative, during Harbaugh's tenure here in the first 4 years in Ann Arbor is he hasn't been able to necessarily win the big game against that top 10 team, especially on the road. So, yeah, they knew the daunting schedule that they had coming in this year. I think some folks had them having one of the toughest schedules in the country. They knew that going in. This wasn't a surprise to anyone. They knew what lied ahead. That opening. Well, I don't think many folks, if you asked me or many of you, my fellow writers or whoever before the season started, few of us had Michigan losing that game at Wisconsin a few weeks ago. We thought they'd win that. So that kind of put things, set them back a little bit. I think they were expecting to win that game. You saw what happened. So that now it makes this Iowa game, questionable. I think they're at this point they're both two very similar teams. Michigan's going to have to get its offense going, or they risk losing a second game here early in the conference slate.
Chatting with Aaron McMann of MLive.com, covers Michigan for them ahead of this top 25 matchup with the Wolverines and the Iowa Hawkeyes. To this matchup specifically, Aaron, look, Iowa, this is very typical of Iowa. And I went to Ohio State, though I couldn't tell you a player on the team anymore. Just to show you how little I care about the football team performance of my alma mater. But it's typical of Iowa in that it's 4-0, but it hasn't played anybody. So with this matchup, how do you think the Wolverines match up with these Hawkeyes where I don't really know how to get a read on Iowa right now because, they haven't played anybody yet other than Iowa State.
Yeah, no, I do think they match up well. I think it helps that they're playing them at home. They're coming off a win. They're able to put their offense together. I thought Michigan matched up well with Wisconsin a few weeks ago, and we saw the result there. They just couldn't stop Jonathan Taylor. Michigan's defensive line, which has been strong the last few years. They pushed out several NFL caliber guys. They just couldn't. The holes were wide. They couldn't stop them. So I'm curious to see how they handle Iowa. Iowa doesn't turn the football over a ton, so I suspect it'll be a relatively clean game from their end. But where Michigan wins or loses this game on Saturday, I think is how efficient or how effective their offense is. Turnovers killed them in the first few games, especially the quarterback position from Shea Patterson. They really cleaned that up last week against Rutgers. So I think the key for Michigan is not turning the football over and being efficient with the football. If we can see something similar to what they did last week against Rutgers, I think they got a shot to win this game on Saturday. But if the turnovers come back, if they make, they commit self-inflicted wounds, penalties, whatever you want to call it, they're going to have trouble winning on Saturday. And then the heat will be back on here in Ann Arbor against Harbaugh and this football team.
With all that said, Aaron, how do you see this one playing out? Michigan's favored by just over a field goal at home. Again, Iowa coming in undefeated, albeit with basically a paper tiger schedule if ever there was one, but nevertheless. So how do you see this one playing out ultimately?
Yeah, I think it'll be a close one. I think Michigan has some momentum, obviously, and some confidence behind them, which I think they didn't have. They certainly didn't have a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, Iowa's unbeaten at this point. They're riding away with momentum as well. I turned to my predictions, I think, earlier today, and I picked Iowa winning 24-21. So I do think it's going to be a close one. But like I just said, it's going to come down to Michigan's offense. If they can keep it clean and move the football without issue, I think they got a shot to win this game. And they may look very good. I mean, maybe it changes the narrative around this team. Maybe keep in mind last year they started the season with this opening loss at Notre Dame, and they were able to rattle off 10 straight wins. And it came down to that regular season finale against Ohio State. The folks are a little nervous at this point, but I think if they can get a win, the convincing win on Saturday against Iowa, it'll change that. But right now, I'm cautious. We saw the offense finally put together, but it was Rutgers. I'm waiting to see them do it against a formidable opponent.
To be sure. Thanks for joining us, Aaron. Again, look forward to having you on a couple more times this season because win or lose this weekend, Michigan, Penn State, Michigan, Notre Dame, Michigan, Ohio State certainly will be monumentally important matchups in the Big Ten and nationally. So look forward to having you on again. Thanks for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
You're listening to the James Crepea Show on Fox Sports Eugene. To update you first on the National League Division Series game in Atlanta. That game is now tied. So the Cardinals and Braves tied at 3 they're still in the bottom half of the 8th inning. It is 2 out and runner in scoring position for the Braves. So the Cardinals managed to claw back, tie the game at 3. And Cardinals now trying to get out of the bottom of the 8th, send it to the 9th, tied at 3. So we'll keep you updated on that one.
So it might not wrap up
during the show.
During the
show.
show.
It may not in the end.
Jinx!
Yeah, no kidding. In the college football world, 2 games underway, both involving teams east of the Mississippi. Georgia Southern and South Alabama in the Fun Belt Conference. It is 7-3 USA, who has the ball deep inside their own territory right now. That game on ESPNU. It's 6:15 to go in the first half. East Carolina leads Temple 7-0 in the American Conference. East Carolina has the ball. That game with about 6 minutes to go in the first quarter as well. So we'll try to keep you updated on all of those. Nats Dodgers also gets underway in Los Angeles on TBS in about 5 minutes. And the Rams and Seahawks in the NFL realm, that game just getting underway. Rams with the ball inside Seattle territory. Only the opening couple of minutes there on the NFL Thursday night game.
And the Seahawks are in their highlighter green uniforms.
Which is very friendly to the broadcast cameras and eyes. It is putrid, is what it is. But, yes, they are in their highlighter green uniforms and just got a big tackle for loss. So lots of games to keep an eye on for the remainder of the program. And we will do our best while welcoming on yet another guest here in a matter of a couple of moments. Again, Dargan Southard covers Iowa for the Des Moines Register. We were chatting with Aaron McMann just a few minutes ago, covers Michigan for MLive.com. So that being one of the top 25 matchups of the weekend. We will have reporters, by the way, from the other top 25 matchups of the weekend, that being Michigan State and Ohio State, Auburn and Florida. Reporters from those 2 games will be chatting with us during tomorrow's show. So we will have our weekly picks with Hold All Tickets, as well as reporters from those 2 games joining us tomorrow as well. And again, keep listening. We will be giving away a pair of tickets to Oregon and Cal on Saturday here at Autzen Stadium. We did it yesterday. We'll do it again today. Keep listening. We'll let you know exactly when to call in and join us on the Davis Roofing Hotline at 541-343-KORE. And we'll give away that pair of tickets here very, very soon.
And speaking of the betting lines, I just took a peek at Chinook wins, and the Oregon-California line has moved to 18, and the UCLA-Oregon State line has moved to 6.
And that's basically where they've been the better part of the week. So I know there's a little bit of minor fluctuation, but that's basically where they've been parked at, and I think they're probably going to stay at that at this particular juncture. But we now welcome on to the program Iowa beat reporter for the Des Moines Register, Mr. Dargan Southard. Again, you can follow him on Twitter at Dargan_Southard, and I hope I'm not butchering the last name, Dargan.
It's actually Southard. But
Southard, there we go. You see, I was going to go with it. You
were right. You were right.
Oh, man.
Blame the producer. Blame the producer.
I was going to go.
It's my fault.
Darn it.
You're far from the first person to mispronounce it, so it's all good.
Fantastic. Well,
I'm fired.
Well, Dargan, it's as I was chatting with a Michigan reporter a few minutes ago, Iowa starts off at 4-0, but as somebody who went to a Big Ten school, this is kind of typical of Iowa because they start off 4-0, they beat Iowa State, but the rest of the non-conference schedule isn't all that daunting. So how daunting or not daunting an Iowa team is this right now? Because it's hard to really get a read on the Hawkeyes right now. It's 4-0, but the schedule is not all that loaded at the moment by who they've played.
No, it's been a relatively easy start to the year. Aside from the road trip to Iowa State, it's been a lot of garbage time moments against Miami of Ohio, Rutgers, and MTSU. So as far as this Saturday being, the top challenge on their slate, that's definitely the case. But to Iowa's credit, they've shown what they've needed to show through these first 4 weeks. It's been a lot of defensive domination, a lot of offensive versatility. You saw that plenty last week in a blowout win. The running game has been solid. The offensive line is, what's kind of been Iowa's staple throughout the course of Kirk Ferentz's tenure, has had some shuffling, some big pieces in and out, but they've been able to kind of hold down the fort there. The secondary's had some injuries as well, but hasn't really felt a whole lot of that sting as well. So, yeah, we'll find out a lot on this big house trip. This is the first time that anybody on Iowa's current roster has gone to Michigan. So, I think through 4 weeks, you've seen what a team that started with the schedule that it has is supposed to do. But obviously this week and then the week after with Penn State at home is when you're going to find out really if this team is deserving of, the number 14 ranking and, a lot of Indianapolis projections that have kind of come with this season.
From Iowa's perspective, what are the keys to achieving success here on the road at Michigan? Because, Michigan's obviously – look, I know they're coming off a really lopsided win over Rutgers, and that led to Chris Ash getting bounced, but it was a matter of when, not if. And, frankly, no one really judges anything against Rutgers. So what exactly are the keys for Iowa? Because Michigan's coming off a big offensive performance, but they also, realistically speaking, are really coming off having a rough outing against Wisconsin. So what are the keys for Iowa heading into this one against, like you say, their best opponent to date?
Yeah, I think even with, Nate Stanley and the ability to throw the ball around, I think it starts with the running game, as it often does with Iowa. They've kind of rolled with this committee approach with Mekhi Sargent and Torrin Young kind of leading the charge there. But they get a big piece back on the offensive line this week. Alaric Jackson's back at left tackle. He was a guy who, had some NFL draft hype, some all Big Ten hype. He's been out since the first week of the season. He comes back and the running game has really been able to keep things rolling even with his absence. There's been a lot of shuffling on the offensive line. Some guys who, started the year as walk-ons come in and held down the fort. And so, they really got the running game back rolling against MTSU. Not that holds a whole lot of merit, but I think anytime Iowa goes on the road and certainly goes into a tough environment, they want to be able to run the ball and kind of milk that clock and really own the time of possession and stuff like that. So, I think that anytime you start with an Iowa attempt to land a big road win, it's got to start with being able to maintain things on the ground and maintain control there. And I think another thing is, the Big House is nothing new in terms of its prowess as a college football environment, but with Iowa being on the opposite side of Michigan in the division, this isn't a chance that a lot of Hawkeyes have had. So, handling the noise, handling the crowd, handling the everything that comes with going to Michigan, I think is imperative. And I think they gained a lot of confidence from going to Iowa State, which, isn't necessarily known for its raucousness, but in this state, that rivalry certainly resonates pretty deeply, and with game day being there, it kind of amplified everything. So, I think this group feels confident going on the road, going north to a Big Ten showdown, and if they can run the ball and kind of handle all the noise and the extra stuff that comes with going to Michigan, I think it'll put the Hawkeyes in position to land a huge win, as they kind of restart this gauntlet stretch into the Big Ten.
And it's certainly a team of importance to Oregon because of the rankings right now. Everybody kind of jarbled. The top 10 is more or less solidified at the moment, and it may get a little bit more freedom after this weekend with Auburn and Florida playing in particular. Ohio State also playing Michigan State. But this game between 14 Iowa and 19 Michigan, somebody's going to get bounced a pretty good bit, and someone's going to get a little bit of a boost. Iowa gets Penn State the week after. They're number 12. So a lot of jostling going on in the mid-teens in the rankings, and Oregon right in the thick of that, so it cares a whole bunch about the outcomes of some of these games. Does the whole season for Iowa really boil down to not only this week, but next week with Penn State and ultimately the Wisconsin game? I mean, I hate looking past opponents in our positions as beat reporters, Dargan, but does it really just boil down that simply to just those three games? Because not just because, Purdue and Northwestern not off to great starts, and obviously Illinois is god-awful, but, they're ranked opponents, they're the best opponents, but at the same time, is that really the only teams that are going to be able to test this Iowa team? Is it really just these three games?
Well, Iowa's kind of had a history sometimes of getting tripped up by a team that maybe you look at it on paper wouldn't necessarily present that challenge. But I think these next 2 weeks are important just because, if Iowa can get these 2 games or at minimum get one, then, it offers a little bit of not necessarily leeway, but you don't feel like the pressure is on going through this stretch of the Big Ten. Now, going to Wisconsin is going to be a huge game for division implications and just for kind of reputation implications as far as Midwest prowess, so to speak. But, the schedule by Iowa standards is been tougher this year, and, they're kind of really diving into it. That's what you get when you start with 4 games that aren't the toughest. You get into the meat of the schedule come early October. So, not to say that if they win these 2 games that the rest of the season that it's going to be a cakewalk. But I think if they can get these next 2 games, Michigan and Penn State, then, this team should feel pretty confident that, whatever challenge comes up next is going to be attainable. Now, Wisconsin, you saw what they did to Michigan. You've seen what they've done year after year, and that's kind of been Iowa's kryptonite for, a lot of these recent seasons. So, it's a good chance that game in Madison down the road is going to come down to who wins the West. But, if Iowa can get these 2 games or certainly at minimum get one of them, then they at least feel like they're in the Big Ten race. They're still have all the goals in front of them and can go into Madison and take care of business and keep, destiny control. But, if they slip up Saturday and then slip up against Penn State, which is a night game at Kinnick, which everybody, loves to hype up, then there's really going to be pressure on for the rest of the season to go flawless. So, which Iowa hasn't always done come late in the season. So no question about it, these next 2 weeks are certainly pivotal.
Dargan, how do you see this one playing out? Because Michigan's favored at home by just over a field goal. At the same time, Iowa's got a pretty talented team here, albeit just hasn't faced that monumental test just yet. So how do you see this one playing out?
Oh, if on the spot, I think Michigan pulls it out. I don't know if they'll necessarily cover or not, but I just think that Michigan's, kind of the law of averages of the season. They already got stumped by Wisconsin. They've already, had a struggle against Army. I don't know if they're going to struggle again against an Iowa team that, has some nice pieces, but it has been largely unproven. I think it's going to hover right around that 3.5 range. And if Iowa pulls it out, I wouldn't be certainly shocked. But I just think, for whatever reason, Iowa going up there in a tough environment, in a hostile crowd is going to swing Michigan's way. And, it's really going to put the pressure on it if they drop this game to get that Penn State game at home and really kind of hold serve with Wisconsin going into, needing to get that game in Madison. So, it could be a big week. It could be a big showing, but if you're putting me on the spot for a pick, I think I'm going to take the Wolverines.
Appreciate you for joining us, and look forward to having you on again, especially if Iowa wins. We'll probably have you on again about a week from now when they're ahead of that Penn State game, because that will almost undoubtedly, for Oregon's purposes, be an elimination game of a team who's in front of them in the polls for a week. So we will definitely look forward to having you on probably as soon as next week. Thanks again for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
You're listening to the James Crepea Show on Fox Sports Eugene. Keeping you updated on all the various games in action at the moment, and there are several, so bear with us. One, you've got the National League Division Series Game 1 between the Atlanta Braves and the St. Louis Cardinals. That game has now swung very much in favor of the Cardinals. It is 5-3 Cards, top 9. So Braves were up only in the 8th inning. Cardinals have come roaring back to take a 5-3 lead. They have the bases loaded. Braves just got the second out. So right now, Atlanta trying to just basically get the heck to the bottom of the ninth inning and survive and give itself a chance for a bloop and a blast to tie this one up. But this would be a brutal one to take. One, because the Braves have played better than the Cards all season. And two, because you're the home team and you were up. And at a certain point in baseball, late and close, it favors the home team in a big way, while the Cardinals, like I say, have come roaring back in a big way. Nats and Dodgers have gotten underway. They are in the bottom of the first, still scoreless down in Los Angeles. The Thursday night game going on between Seattle and the Rams. The Rams lead 3-0 on the Seahawks. And another update for the Cardinals. The Cardinals now up 7-3. So it looks a whole lot like St. Louis is about to steal one in a big way against the Braves. And frankly, one more hit, and I mean, there's absolutely no way that Atlanta's coming back in the bottom of the ninth. At 4 runs, you have the illusion of a chance, but anything more than that, and it's really over. So realistically, Cardinals have the Braves almost in a full stranglehold here in the top of the ninth. Still got 2 runners aboard and with 2 out in the top of the ninth. We'll keep you updated. That one wraps up here. I doubt it'll happen the next 10 minutes, but maybe. Again, Nats and Dodgers scoreless bottom 1. Rams have now made it 6-0 on the Seahawks in the first quarter there for the NFL Thursday night game. And in the college realm, you've got a couple of southeastern-ish games going on in college football. So Georgia Southern leads South Alabama 10-7 at halftime. East Carolina leads Temple 7-3 early in the second quarter. So there is a rundown of the various games going on all over the sports world at the moment. Quite a few, to say the least. Again, tomorrow we will make our weekly picks and hold all tickets. Steve will try to repeat what was his strongest week of the season last week, and I will try to very much correct what was not a particularly good week for me. Uncharacteristic, especially in the over-unders. That was uncharacteristically awful for me. I was doing really good there, and boy,
like I said, I got a lot of catching up to do. So.
Not great. But yeah, we will have that tomorrow. And again, reporters from both sides of the other top 25 matchups as well, that being the Ohio State-Michigan State game, and from the Auburn and Florida games as well tomorrow. To wrap up today's show, some just news and notes from around the college football world. So another prominent player hopping in the transfer portal, this one being West Virginia safety Javonni Stuart. The multiple reports out of Morgantown indicating that Stewart is currently considering basically doing the same thing that Houston quarterback Derek King and their receiver did, and that he's considering basically ending his season now, redshirting, except that it sounds like Stewart isn't talking about coming back for a 5th season at West Virginia. He's talking about leaving as a graduate transfer. So we will see whether or not that completely proves true and prophetic, or if West Virginia, which has a new coach in Neil Brown, and I actually know one of the defensive assistants up in Morgantown, who I have not spoken to this week or anything like that. I haven't, but I may be reaching out just to touch base and say, hey,
where's this guy going? Well,
where's he headed? Because it's not just that, hey, it's another guy talking about doing this. Javonni Stuart, if you look at his stats from last season, this guy was one heck of a disruptive safety. And they've switched to a 4-2-5 defense, which is essentially just playing nickel all the time, which, by the way, most everybody plays that as it may not be their de facto base. Other people try to avoid saying that their base is nickel. It's become the base, especially in the Big 12, where no one plays defense, really. Though I'm telling you, Neil Brown and his staff want to very badly, and eventually I'm sure they'll recruit enough to get the players to do that. But as a player who they inherited, Javonni Stuart, again, you look at some of his disruptive stats by way of, this is a safety who was notching a bunch of tackles for loss and sacks. This wasn't a safety who was just trying to be a ball hawk. No. This was a box safety, nickel safety, come down and blitz and create havoc in the backfield kind of safety. So this is somebody who, if he does ultimately do this, according to multiple reports, like I say, leaning towards redshirting this season and pursuing a graduate transfer to go elsewhere in 2020, would be heavily, heavily pursued if he ends up entering the transfer portal, and we could get some clarity on that, whether it be in the next couple of days or next week or whatever. Yes, but he will definitely be one of those just more heavily sought-after players because, like I say, there's a whole bunch of defenses out there who want a player like that. Now, I'm not telling you about a guy who, if you want it, you can have your own opinion about what the young man's doing 4 games into what is his senior season. But ultimately, he has every right and ability to redshirt just like anybody else. And players are starting to use this redshirt rule to their advantage. Well, he reportedly is a player considering doing that. And unlike some who, because there's others out there, there's been other reports this week of guys going in the transfer portal and stuff all over the country. But I'm not going to talk about every single one of them because more often than not, it's guys who, frankly, aren't playing very much because they're not very good. And they look to move on to greener pastures, and that's fine. That's fine, too. But here's a guy whose record before was like, hot dang. Like he was.
We talk about the players that are most likely to be highly sought after going into the transfer portal. I wonder if there's a way to find out what schools have done the best job in taking advantage and snagging players.
So I will look to have on at some point. Would have been great to try to turn him around real quick on it because Chris Vanini of The Athletic actually wrote a story. I believe it was either today or yesterday. But he does a nice job, and he covers a lot of the Group of 5 for The Athletic. And Vanini did a piece. I saw him tweet it out earlier. I haven't had a chance to read it in full yet. On more or less that exactly what Steve was just hitting on there, that there are X number of teams that have really taken advantage of the portal with a good number of transfers this past offseason. So, yeah, I'm finding his tweet now from earlier today. Of the 8 FBS teams to bring in at least 8 transfers this past offseason.
Wow.
Okay? 8. 5 were from the Group of 5 schools.
Okay.
All of those 5 happen to be in major recruiting areas. That's SMU in Dallas. That's Houston, obviously. UCF in Orlando. FAU in Boca, but Fort Lauderdale, Boca,
right.
Miami. And FIU also in the same general vicinity. So Vanini's piece, which, again, you could check out on The Athletic if you're a subscriber, or, again, I haven't even had a chance to read it in full yet today myself because I've been a wee bit busy, but I will be later tonight. But kind of drawing to your point, Steve, is that, yeah, there are teams out there who have really bolstered their teams significantly via the transfer portal. 5 of the 8 FBS teams who brought in at least 8 transfers this past offseason coming from the Group of 5, and in major recruiting areas. And you go, well, why is that? And Chris's piece, at least in what he details on Twitter in a tweet, is saying recruiting Power 5 transfers who want to come home.
Oh, okay.
Is almost becoming a recruiting strategy in and of itself.
Okay.
The premise being that, yeah, if you're guys who are from Dallas, Houston, parts of Florida.
And they get homesick.
Either homesick or you just want to end your career and be home, or you want to grad transfer and end your career, but you want to be home now. You did your thing. You did your thing as an undergrad, and or even if it's not undergrad, even if it's just you're transferring just in general.
Yeah.
But coming closer to home is a part of it. So it's not just you're bringing mass transfers. You may be bringing transfers who are from your immediate area.
Hey, we better do the tickets.
Yes, sir. It's about time. If you've been waiting, give us a call on the Davis Roofing Hotline, 541-343-KORE. That's 541-343-5673. Fifth caller gets the pair of tickets to Oregon and Cal on Saturday. So, again, 541-343-KORE. Give us a call. Fifth caller gets the pair of tickets to Oregon and Cal Saturday night. So, again, to reiterate, give us a call on the Davis Roofing Hotline, 541-343-5673. Fifth caller gets it, and the phone's already very much a humming. And we will try to let you know who gets that pair of tickets here in just a couple of moments. Elsewhere in the college football world today, well, before I jump to that, because we were just mentioning about the transfers and guys getting home and et cetera, Javonni Stuart, by the way, from Catay, Texas. So I'm not telling you that he's automatically leaving, although the reports are indicating that he is, or that he's going to end up at a school in Texas. That just happens to be because, just to finish the talking point that we were just discussing related to this story, but I'm not telling you he's definitely going there, but if he does, okay, that's where he happens to be from. Okay. Separately, within the college football world, we've talked a little bit about Tennessee because they just continue to be in this news in the news cycle in college football. By the way, their season has started. Well, Philip Fulmer, former Vols coach, is now the AD, et cetera, et cetera. Well, if you ask enough Vols people, and enough crazy Vols boosters, of which there are many, they yearn for days of yore even more than certain other fan bases around the country, maybe like the one around here. Some would love to see Philip Fulmer, all 800 years old of him, 69 technically, but I'll indulge. Get back on the sideline and lead, especially when Jeremy Pruitt's not doing so well. Well, he went on Vol Calls, which is their radio show and in-house radio show, yesterday, and said he had no desire to do that, and that the, quote, coaching chapter of my life is closed. He did that basically while only facing a very friendly audience there. He said, we've got a good coach, and I believe in Jeremy Pruitt totally. I have no interest in coaching again and would rather spend that time being a grandfather and doing whatever I can as athletic director in helping Jeremy get this program where we all want it to be. Any talk of me coaching again is just a bunch of rumors. Winner of the tickets, Mr. John Ruiz of Springfield. He wins the pair of tickets to Oregon and Cal on Saturday. Thanks for all those who called in trying to win them, but we do have our winner. Thanks for our various guests today. Again, our guests tomorrow cover Ohio State, Michigan State, Auburn, and Florida. You've been listening to the James Crepea Show on Fox Sports Eugene. Hit the lights and lock the doors.